They say love makes you blind, but I never understood what that really meant until I found myself staring at my empty bank account in a small apartment in Bangkok, realizing that the woman I thought I'd spend my life with had been playing me from the very first smile. Sometimes the most expensive lessons in life aren't taught in classrooms. They're taught in dimly lit clubs, where promises sound sweeter than they should, and hope costs more than you can afford. This is my story. This is what happened when I ignored every warning sign and paid the price for believing I was different from everyone else. I'm about to share details that still make me cringe when I think about them. Details about how a smart, educated man can become a complete fool when his heart takes over from his brain. Details about manipulation tactics so subtle you don't even realize you're being played until it's way too late. If you like our videos, go ahead and subscribe right now and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. I want to know I'm not alone in this. I want to hear your stories too, because I know I'm not the only one who's been through something like this. My name is Roger. I'm 32 years old and I work as a software consultant. My job lets me work remotely from anywhere in the world, which sounds like a dream until you realize that freedom can become a trap if you're not careful. I'd always been the cautious type. The guy who read reviews before buying anything, who planned trips months in advance, who never made impulsive decisions. My friends used to joke that I was boring, that I needed to loosen up, live a little, take some risks. Looking back, I wish I'd stayed boring. I wish I'd kept all that caution wrapped around me like armor. But life has a way of breaking you down until you're willing to try anything to feel alive again. Let me give you some context about where I was mentally when this all started. 2 years before my trip to Thailand, my wife of 6 years left me. Just packed her bags one Tuesday afternoon while I was at work and moved in with a guy she'd met at her gym. No warning, no marriage counseling, no second chance. Just a note on the kitchen counter that said she wasn't happy anymore and needed to find herself. That kind of rejection does something to you. It makes you question everything. Was I not enough? Was I too boring? Too focused on work? Not romantic enough? Not spontaneous enough? I spent months replaying our relationship in my head, trying to figure out where I went wrong. My therapist told me it wasn't my fault, that sometimes people just grow apart, that her leaving said more about her than it did about me. But that didn't make it hurt any less. After the divorce was finalized, I threw myself into work, 60, 70-hour weeks, taking on extra projects, volunteering for assignments no one else wanted. It was easier to focus on code and client meetings than to deal with the giant empty space in my life where a partner used to be. My friends tried to get me to go out, to date, to join them for nights out at bars, but I wasn't ready. I'd convinced myself that relationships weren't worth the risk. That being alone was safer than being vulnerable again. For 2 years, that's how I lived. Work, gym, Netflix, repeat. I told myself I was fine, that I was focusing on my career, that I was healing. But really, I was just hiding. Then one day in February, I woke up and realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt genuinely happy. Not content, not okay, but actually happy, excited about something, looking forward to something. I was 32 years old, and my life felt like it was over before it had really begun. That's when I decided I needed a change. Not a small change like joining a new gym or taking up a hobby. A big change. Something that would shake me out of the fog I'd been living in. I'd heard about Thailand for years. The beaches, the food, the culture. Everyone I knew who'd been there came back with stories about how incredible it was, how cheap it was, how friendly the people were, how it was the perfect place to reset and figure out what you wanted from life. So I booked a ticket, 3 weeks in Thailand. Bangkok first, then maybe down to the islands. No real plan beyond that. Just a one-way ticket to somewhere completely different from the life I'd been living. What they didn't tell me was how easy it is to lose yourself in a place that beautiful. How simple it becomes to believe in things that aren't real when you're surrounded by smiles and sunshine and the kind of attention you've never gotten back home. How a man can go from cautious and guarded to reckless and trusting in the span of a single conversation with the right woman. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how it actually happened step by step, so you can see exactly how a smart person can make such stupid decisions. I arrived in Bangkok on a Tuesday afternoon in March. The heat hit me the moment I stepped off the plane, thick and heavy, wrapping around me like a wet blanket. It was 95 degrees and felt like 110 with the humidity. My shirt was stuck to my back before I even made it through customs. But there was something exciting about it too. This oppressive heat that was so different from the cold March weather I'd left behind in Seattle. This was adventure. This was the unknown. This was exactly what I needed. I took a taxi to my hotel in Sukhumvit, watching the city rush past my window, skyscrapers next to old temples, brand new Mercedes stuck in traffic next to beat-up tuk-tuks, street vendors selling pad thai next to 7-story luxury malls with Gucci and Prada. Everything felt like a contradiction, and I loved it immediately. My hotel was decent. Nothing fancy, but clean and comfortable with air conditioning that actually worked. $300 for the whole week, which seemed insanely cheap compared to Seattle hotel prices. I spent the first afternoon just walking around the neighborhood, getting my bearings. The streets were chaos. Motorcycles weaving through traffic. Vendors calling out in Thai. The smell of street food mixing with exhaust fumes and incense from the spirit houses on every corner. It was overwhelming in the best possible way. I felt more alive in those first few hours than I had in months back home. For the first few days, I did all the typical tourist things, visited the Grand Palace, and took 100 photos of the golden spires and detailed murals, took a boat down the Chao Phraya River, and watched the city slide past from the water, visited Wat Pho to see the giant reclining Buddha that was so big it barely fit in the building, ate pad thai from a street cart, run by an old woman who didn't speak any English, but somehow made me understand exactly what I was ordering through gestures and smiles. That pad thai changed my understanding of what food could taste like. The perfect balance of sweet, sour, salty, and spicy all at once. Nothing like the sad takeout versions I'd eaten back home. But by the fourth night, the loneliness started creeping back in. Being in a foreign country by yourself sounds romantic until you're actually doing it. Eating alone, walking alone, taking photos with no one to share them with, seeing couples everywhere, holding hands, laughing together, being in love. It reminded me of what I'd lost, what I didn't have anymore. I'd sit in restaurants surrounded by people and feel completely isolated. The language barrier made it worse. I couldn't have real conversations with anyone, couldn't make connections, couldn't explain who I was or what I was feeling. I was just another foreign tourist passing through, invisible and irrelevant. That's when my hotel concierge suggested I check out the nightlife. His name was Somchai, a friendly guy probably in his 50s who'd worked at the hotel for 20 years. He spoke perfect English and had this way of reading people. He could tell I was lonely, could see it written all over my face. So one evening when I was heading out for another solo dinner, he stopped me and said I should check out the entertainment districts. Nana Plaza, he said, or Soy Cowboy, or Patpong. Places where I could have some drinks, meet some people, have some fun. He gave me that knowing smile when he said it. The smile that said he knew exactly what those places were and exactly what I'd find there. I told him I wasn't really into that scene, that I wasn't the kind of guy who paid for company. He just shrugged and said, go have a look anyway. No pressure to do anything. Just see what it's about. Have a beer. Watch the people. You might be surprised. I'd heard of Nana Plaza, of course. Everyone who researches Bangkok nightlife knows about Nana Plaza. It's famous, or infamous depending on who you ask. Before my trip, I'd seen videos on YouTube. Read articles warning tourists about the scams and the girls and the whole scene. I told myself I wasn't going to be one of those guys. I wasn't going to be the pathetic foreigner who falls for a bar girl and gets his heart broken and his wallet emptied. I was smarter than that, more aware. But loneliness does funny things to your resolve, makes you rationalize, makes you think maybe just looking wouldn't hurt, maybe just one drink to see what all the fuss was about. Maybe I could handle it better than other guys because I was going in with my eyes open. So on my 5th night in Bangkok, I took a taxi to Nana Plaza. It was around 9 p.m. when I arrived. The place was already busy. Neon lights everywhere. Music pounding from a dozen different clubs, each one competing to be louder than the next. Girls standing outside every entrance calling to every man who walked by. Hello, handsome. Come inside. Have a drink with me. I'll take care of you. Some of them were aggressive about it, grabbing guys by the arm and trying to pull them inside. Others were more subtle, just standing there looking beautiful and available. The whole place had this energy that was part exciting, part desperate, part dangerous. Like anything could happen here, good or bad, and you wouldn't know which until it was too late. I almost turned around and left right then. It felt too much, too obvious, too transactional. This wasn't a place where real connections happened. This was a marketplace where everything and everyone had a price. But then I saw her. She was standing near the entrance of a club called Diamond Dreams, and she wasn't like the other girls. She wasn't calling out to men walking past, wasn't grabbing anyone's arm, wasn't doing the hard sell. She was just standing there looking at her phone, almost like she didn't want to be there at all. Like she was trying to disappear into the background while everyone else was fighting for attention. She had long dark hair that fell past her shoulders in waves. Her skin was that perfect golden brown that Thai women have. She was wearing a simple black dress, nothing too revealing, nothing that screamed, "Pay attention to me." And when she looked up from her phone and our eyes met for just a second, something inside me just stopped. Time slowed down. The noise faded. All I could see was her. She smiled. Not the practiced smile of someone working. Not the fake, seductive smile designed to lure in customers. Something softer. Something that felt real. Something that made me think maybe she was different from the others. Maybe she wasn't fully part of this scene. Maybe she was just trying to get by, doing what she had to do, but not really being one of them. I know how stupid that sounds now. But in that moment, with that smile, I believed it. I walked over before I could talk myself out of it. My heart was pounding. My hands were sweating despite the air conditioning blasting from inside the club. I felt like a teenager approaching a girl for the first time, nervous and excited and terrified all at once. "Hello," I said. My voice came out weird, too quiet, too uncertain. She looked up at me and smiled again. That same soft smile. "Hello," she replied. Her English had a thick Thai accent, but it was clear enough to understand. "You want to come inside? Have a drink?" I hesitated. This was it. The point of no decision. I could say no thanks and walk away and go back to my lonely hotel room and my lonely tourist activities. Or I could say yes and see where this went. Just one drink, I told myself. Just to talk to someone. Just to feel less alone for an hour. "Okay," I said. "One drink." Her smile got wider. She took my hand, which surprised me, and led me inside. Her hand was small and soft and warm. The touch of it sent electricity up my arm. When was the last time someone had held my hand? When was the last time I'd had any physical contact that wasn't a handshake or an accidental bump on the sidewalk? Inside, the club was loud and dark with flashing lights. There was a stage in the center where girls were dancing around poles. Some were dressed in bikinis, some in lingerie, some in elaborate costumes. Men sat around the stage on stools, drinking and watching, and occasionally waving money to get a girl's attention. The whole thing felt surreal, like I'd stepped into a different world that operated on completely different rules than the one I knew. My guide led me to a booth in the back, away from the main action. She slid in next to me, close but not too close. "What's your name?" she asked. "Roger," I told her. "I'm Juan," she said. "Nice to meet you, Roger." She said my name carefully, pronouncing each syllable like it was important to get it right. We talked for hours that night. She asked me about America, about my job, about why I came to Thailand alone. I found myself telling her things I hadn't told anyone. About my divorce. About how I'd thrown myself into work and forgotten how to live. About how I'd woken up one day and realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd been truly happy. She listened in a way no one had listened to me in a long time. Really listened. Not just waiting for her turn to talk, but actually hearing what I was saying. Her eyes stayed on mine. She nodded in the right places. She asked follow-up questions that showed she was paying attention. When I talked about my ex-wife leaving, she reached over and put her hand on mine and said, "Her loss. Any woman who leaves a good man like you is a fool." It felt so good to be heard, to be seen, to matter to someone, even if that someone was a stranger I'd just met in a bar in Bangkok. I asked her about herself, where she was from, how she ended up here. She told me she was 24 years old, from a small village in Isan province in northeast Thailand. The poorest part of the country, she explained, where people farm rice and struggle to make enough money to survive. Her parents were rice farmers. They worked hard their whole lives, but barely made enough to feed the family. She had a younger brother, 15 years old, still in school. A smart kid, she said, good at math and science. He wanted to be a doctor someday. But university in Thailand was expensive. Her family couldn't afford it. So she came to Bangkok 2 years ago to make money, to send back home so her brother could finish school, so her parents could have a better life in their old age. When I asked if she liked working here, she shrugged and looked away for a moment. "It pays better than anything else I can do with just a high school education," she said. Her voice was quiet, almost ashamed, but also matter of fact. This was reality. This was survival. I make more in 1 month here than my father makes in a year farming rice. So I do it, for my family. There was no shame in her voice when she said it. No apology. Just honesty. And that's what got me. That honesty. She wasn't pretending to be something she wasn't making up some elaborate story about how she ended up here. She was just being real with me. Or at least that's what I thought at the time. I asked if I could buy her a drink. She said yes, but insisted on buying the second round herself with her own money. That should have been my first clue that something was different about her. Or at least that's what I told myself. Most girls working in these places don't offer to buy you drinks. They want you to buy them lady drinks because they get a commission on every drink a customer buys for them. But Juan bought her own drink, used her own money, didn't ask me to pay for it. It made me feel like maybe this wasn't purely transactional. Maybe she actually liked talking to me. Maybe I was more than just another customer. As the night went on, I learned more about her. She loved Thai dramas and would watch them on her phone whenever she had free time. Her favorite food was som tam, spicy papaya salad from Isan. She was afraid of dogs because she'd been bitten by one when she was a child. She wanted to travel someday, maybe to Japan or Korea, but had never been outside Thailand. She missed her village sometimes, especially during Songkran, the Thai New Year water festival, when everyone came home to celebrate with family. She sent most of her money home but saved a little bit each month, hoping to eventually have enough to start a small business, maybe a food cart or a small shop, something that would let her leave this life behind. The way she talked about her dreams made my heart ache. Here was this beautiful, smart young woman stuck in a situation she didn't want to be in, doing what she had to do to survive and help her family. I wanted to help her. I wanted to be the person who made those dreams possible. I wanted to be her hero. Looking back, that was probably the moment I was truly hooked. The moment I stopped seeing reality and started seeing the fairy tale I wanted to believe in. When the club started closing down around 2 in the morning, I realized we'd been talking for almost 5 hours straight. I hadn't even noticed the time passing. Hadn't paid attention to anything else happening in the club. It had just been us in our little booth, talking like we were old friends catching up. I asked if I could see her again. She hesitated for just a moment, and in that hesitation I felt my stomach drop. Maybe I'd misread everything. Maybe she was just being polite, doing her job, and I'd mistaken professional friendliness for genuine interest. But then she smiled and said yes. She pulled out her phone and we exchanged Line IDs. For those who don't know, Line is the messaging app everyone in Thailand uses. It's like WhatsApp, but bigger in Asia. Within seconds, I had her contact info and a little selfie she sent as her first message, a picture of her smiling, holding up a peace sign. So cute, so innocent, so perfect. We made plans to meet for dinner the next evening. Not at the club. Not in the entertainment district. Just dinner at a normal restaurant like normal people on a normal date. I floated back to my hotel that night on a cloud of hope and possibility. This was it. This was what I'd been missing. Not just a woman, but connection. The feeling of being wanted. The excitement of new potential. I barely slept, too keyed up thinking about her. About us, about what this could become. The next evening, I met her at a restaurant in Thong Lo, a trendy neighborhood popular with younger Thais and expats. She showed up right on time, wearing jeans and a cute top, looking completely different from the club version of herself. More casual, more real. More like someone I could actually be with. We had dinner and talked more. About our families, our childhoods, our hopes and fears. She told me more about growing up in her village, how she'd wake up at 5 every morning to help her father in the fields before going to school, how they didn't have much money, but they were happy because they had each other. How she'd always been good at school and dreamed of going to university, but there just wasn't money for it. How her mother cried when she told them she was moving to Bangkok to work. I told her about growing up in the suburbs of Seattle, about my comfortable middle-class childhood, that felt boring compared to her stories of struggle and resilience, about my parents who were still married after 35 years, still living in the same house I grew up in, living quiet, stable lives, about how I'd gone to college, gotten a good job, married my college girlfriend and thought I had everything figured out until it all fell apart. She reached across the table and took my hand. "You're a good man, Roger," she said. "I can see it. You deserve to be happy." Such simple words, but they meant everything to me in that moment, because I'd spent 2 years believing I didn't deserve to be happy, that I'd failed at marriage because something was wrong with me, and here was this beautiful woman telling me I was good. I was worthy. I deserved happiness. After dinner, we walked around the neighborhood, window shopping and people watching. She looped her arm through mine as we walked, and it felt so natural, so right, like we'd been doing this for years. We stopped at a night market, and I bought her a small bracelet from a vendor. Nothing expensive, maybe 200 baht, about $6, but she acted like I'd given her diamonds. She put it on immediately and kept looking at it and smiling. "Thank you, Roger," she said. "No one has bought me a gift in so long. I will treasure this. Such a small thing, but it made me feel like a king, like I had the power to make her happy with the smallest gesture. It was intoxicating. That became our pattern for the next 3 weeks. We saw each other almost every day. She'd finish her shift at the club around 2 a.m., and we'd meet for late-night food at some 24-hour restaurant. Or she'd take a night off, and we'd spend the whole evening together. She showed me parts of Bangkok I never would have found on my own. Little restaurants tucked away in alleyways, where the food was incredible and no one spoke English, where locals ate and tourists never came, places where a full meal cost less than a coffee back home, temples that weren't in any guidebook, small neighborhood shrines where old ladies made offerings and monks chanted prayers, markets where locals shopped and you could get anything from fresh fruit to used motorcycles to live chickens. She was like my personal guide to the real Bangkok, not the tourist version, but the actual city where actual people lived their actual lives. She was funny too, had this silly sense of humor that would catch me off guard and make me laugh when I least expected it. She'd make faces at street dogs to try to scare them. She'd imitate the way I said certain Thai words with my terrible American accent. She'd tell me stories about crazy customers at the club, guys who did ridiculous things trying to impress her or other girls, guys who proposed marriage after knowing a girl for 2 hours, guys who cried when they had to go home, guys who fell asleep drunk at their table and had to be carried out by security. We'd laugh about it together, and I'd think, thank God I'm not like those guys. Thank God I'm different. Thank God she sees me as different. We'd sit by the river at night, watching the boats go by, the city lights reflecting on the water. She'd tell me stories about growing up in her village, how she used to help her father in the rice fields before school, her feet sinking into the mud, her back aching from bending over all day, how her mother made the best somtam in the whole province, so spicy it would make your eyes water, but so delicious you couldn't stop eating. How her younger brother Natawut was so smart, always top of his class, already talking about becoming a doctor even though he was only 15. How the whole village had high hopes for him. How his success would lift the whole family up. How it was her job to make sure he had that chance, even if it meant sacrificing her own dreams. And this is where I started to feel something deeper than just attraction or infatuation. I started to genuinely care about her family, about her brother's future, about her parents growing old on that rice farm. I started to see myself as part of that story, as someone who could make a difference, who could help change their lives for the better. It gave me purpose, made me feel important, made me feel like my money and my privilege and my foreign passport could actually mean something beyond just making my own life comfortable. She never directly asked for money in those early days, never said she needed help or that her family was in crisis. But she'd mention things casually. How she needed to send money home for her brother's school uniforms, how her father's old motorcycle had finally broken down and he was having to walk everywhere, how her mother needed to see a doctor, but the public hospital had a 3-month waiting list. Just mentioning these things in passing, like they were facts of life, not requests for help. But of course I'd offer, because that's what you do when you care about someone, right? You help them when they need it. You step up. You be the solution to their problems. The first time I gave her money, it was 5,000 baht, about $150. She'd mentioned that her brother's school fees were due, and her parents were short. I could see the stress on her face when she talked about it, could hear the worry in her voice. So I offered to help. Just this once, I said, just to take some pressure off. She cried. Actually cried. Said no one had ever been so kind to her before. Said she didn't know how to thank me. Said she'd pay me back as soon as she could. I told her not to worry about paying me back. That I was happy to help. That it wasn't about the money, it was about helping her family. She hugged me so tight I could feel her heart beating against my chest. Thank you, Roger, she whispered. You're an angel. You're saving us. Looking back, that was the moment the dynamic shifted. That was when I went from being a guy she was dating to being a sponsor, a provider, an ATM, but I didn't see it that way at the time. I saw it as deepening our connection, as proving my commitment to her and her family, as showing that I was serious about this, about us, about building a future together. I felt good about it, proud even, like I was doing something meaningful with my privilege and resources. The second time it was 3,000 baht for her mother's medicine. The third time it was 10,000 for emergency repairs on their house. The fourth time it was another 5,000 for her brother's extra tutoring classes. Small amounts by my standards, a few $100s here and there, nothing that would break my bank account. But it was adding up, and more importantly, it was establishing a pattern. Every week or two, there'd be some new situation that required money. And every time I'd offer to help before she even had to ask, because I wanted to be the hero. I wanted to be the one who solved all their problems. I wanted to be indispensable to her life. After about 3 weeks, my vacation time was starting to run out. I had projects waiting for me back home, clients who needed my attention, a life I'd put on pause but couldn't ignore forever. The thought of leaving Bangkok, leaving Juan, made me physically sick to my stomach. We'd spent almost every day together for 3 weeks, had created this little bubble of happiness that felt separate from reality. The idea of going back to my empty apartment in Seattle, going back to lonely dinners and Netflix and more work, felt impossible. I didn't want to leave. More than that, I didn't want to leave her. One night, about 5 days before my scheduled flight home, we were lying in my hotel bed together. She was curled up against my side, her head on my chest, her arm across my stomach. We'd just made love, and I was in that post-sex glow where everything feels perfect and possible. I could feel her breathing, slow and steady, could smell her shampoo, something fruity and sweet, could feel the warmth of her skin against mine, and I realized I was in love with her. Actually, truly in love. Not infatuation, not lust, not just loneliness finding an outlet, but real love, the kind that makes you want to change your whole life to be with someone. Juan, I said. She made a small noise to show she was listening. What if I didn't go home? What if I stayed here, in Bangkok, with you? She lifted her head and looked at me, her eyes wide. What do you mean? She asked. I mean, what if I stayed? I continued. My job is remote. I can work from anywhere. I could rent an apartment here. We could be together properly. Build a real life. She was quiet for a long moment, just looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Then slowly her eyes filled with tears. You would do that? She whispered. You would stay here for me? I would, I said. I want to, if you want me to. She kissed me then, deep and desperate, and when she pulled back she was crying and smiling at the same time. Yes, she said. Yes, I want you to stay. I want us to be together. I love you, Roger. It was the first time she'd said those words. I love you. 3 words I'd been desperate to hear. 3 words that made everything feel real and validated and right. I love you too, I said back. And I meant it. With every fiber of my being, I meant it. We made love again. Slower this time, more emotional, both of us understanding that this was a turning point. That we weren't just having a vacation fling anymore. We were committing to something real, something permanent, something that would change both our lives. The next day, reality started to creep in. I couldn't actually stay in Thailand indefinitely on a tourist visa. I'd have to go home at least for a while to figure out the logistics. Get the right visa. Maybe even look into what it would take to live in Thailand long term. But we made a plan. I'd go back to Seattle. Handle my affairs. My apartment lease was up in 2 months anyway, so I wouldn't renew it. I'd put my stuff in storage. I'd come back to Bangkok in 6 weeks with a proper visa, and we'd find an apartment together. Start our life for real. In the meantime, I'd support her financially so she could quit working at the club. That was non-negotiable for me. I couldn't handle the thought of her being with other men, even in the limited capacity of working at Diamond Dreams. If we were going to be together, really together, she needed to be only mine. We had the conversation about money the night before I left. We were sitting in a little outdoor restaurant near Khao San Road, sharing a plate of fried rice and grilled chicken. The street was bustling with backpackers and vendors and tuk-tuks honking their horns, but in our little corner it felt like it was just us. "How much do you make at the club?" I asked. She looked down at her plate. "Maybe 40,000 baht on a good month," she said. "About $1,200. Sometimes less if it's slow. Sometimes more if there are big spenders. But usually around that." "Okay," I said. "I'll send you 50,000 every month. That way you can quit and still have enough for your family and your own expenses. You can find a normal job, something that makes you happy, and we'll build from there." She started crying right there at the table, tears streaming down her face while people walked past, and vendors called out their wares, and life continued around us. "No one has ever taken care of me like this," she said between sobs. "No one has ever cared about me this much. I promise I won't let you down, Roger. I promise I'll be good to you. I'll wait for you. I'll be only yours." I reached across the table and took both her hands in mine. "I know you will," I said. "I trust you." Those words, "I trust you," they would come back to haunt me in ways I couldn't imagine. I left Bangkok the next morning with my heart feeling like it was being ripped out of my chest. Wan came to the airport with me, even though I told her she didn't have to. She cried the whole time, clung to me at the departure gate until the last possible moment, made me promise I'd come back soon, made me promise I wouldn't forget her, made me promise I wouldn't find someone else, as if I could forget her, as if anyone else could ever compare. I boarded the plane, feeling like I was leaving half of myself behind in Bangkok, like I couldn't breathe properly without her next to me, like these 6 weeks until I could return would be the longest 6 weeks of my life. The flight back to Seattle was misery. 15 hours of sitting in an uncomfortable seat, watching bad movies, unable to sleep, my mind racing with thoughts of Wan and our future together. When I finally landed and took a taxi back to my apartment, the place felt cold and empty and wrong, like it belonged to a different version of me. A version that didn't know what happiness felt like. I couldn't stand being there. Couldn't stand looking at my things, my furniture, my carefully organized life that now seemed meaningless and small. That first night back, I lay in my bed that felt too big and too empty, and I video called Wan. Seeing her face on my screen made everything better and worse at the same time. Better because I could see her, hear her voice, feel connected to her across the thousands of miles between us. Worse because she wasn't actually there, because I couldn't touch her or hold her or fall asleep with her curled up against me. This became our routine. We talked every single day, video calls in the morning before I started work, around 7 a.m. my time, which was 7 p.m. her time. She'd be getting ready to go out for dinner with friends or settling in for the evening. She'd show me what she was wearing, ask my opinion on her makeup, tell me about her day. We'd message throughout the day, her telling me about the job interviews she was going to, the normal jobs she was looking for, me telling her about the boring client meetings I sat through, the code I was writing, the plans I was making for our future together. Long calls at night before I went to sleep, which was morning for her. We'd talk for hours about everything and nothing. Our dreams, our fears, our plans, what kind of apartment we wanted to get together, what areas of Bangkok we should look at, whether we should eventually visit her village so I could meet her family properly, whether we should think about getting married at some point. She seemed happy. She seemed genuine. She sent me pictures constantly throughout the day. Her at the market buying vegetables, holding up a papaya and making a funny face. Her at a coffee shop with friends, normal Thai girls her age, everyone smiling and doing peace signs for the camera. Her in her apartment, wearing my old t-shirt that I'd left behind, looking cozy and cute. Her at temples making merit, being spiritual and thoughtful. Every picture reinforced the narrative I wanted to believe, that she was a good girl who'd been trapped in bad circumstances, and I was helping her escape. That she was building a better life, while waiting for me to return. That our love was real and strong enough to survive the distance. I sent her the 50,000 baht on the 1st of April, exactly 1 week after I'd left Bangkok. She sent me a video of herself crying and thanking me, telling me I was the best man in the world, telling me she didn't deserve me. 2 days later, she sent me pictures of herself at what she said was a job interview at a small marketing company. She was dressed professionally in a white blouse and black skirt, looking nervous but hopeful. She said the interview went well, and they might call her back for a second round. I was so proud of her, so excited that she was taking steps to change her life, to become the person she wanted to be, rather than the person circumstances had forced her to be. But then came the first crack in the facade. It was small, barely noticeable if you weren't paying attention, but it was there. About 2 weeks after I'd left, she called me in the middle of the night, Bangkok time. It was around 2 a.m. for her, which was 10 a.m. for me. I was in a meeting with a client, so I couldn't answer. She called 3 more times. Then she started messaging frantically. "Roger, please answer. Roger, I need you. Roger, please. It's emergency." My heart dropped into my stomach. I excused myself from the meeting and called her back immediately. She answered on the first ring, sobbing hysterically. "Roger," she choked out between sobs. "My father, there's been an accident. He was on his motorcycle. A car hit him. He's in the hospital. It's bad. They say he might die. They need money for surgery right away. 20,000 baht. If we don't have it by tomorrow, they won't do the surgery. He'll die, Roger. My father is going to die." The sound of her voice, the raw terror and grief in it, broke my heart. I didn't even think, didn't ask questions, didn't request proof or details. I just acted. "Of course," I said. "I'll send it right now. Don't worry, your father will be fine. I promise. We'll take care of him." I opened my banking app right there, standing in the hallway outside the conference room, and transferred 20,000 baht to her account. About $600. Gone in seconds. She thanked me over and over through her tears. "You saved his life," she kept saying. "You saved my father's life." I didn't know what to do. I was so scared. "Thank you, Roger. Thank you so much." I told her to focus on her father, to go be with her family, not to worry about me. We'd talk when things calmed down. 2 days passed with minimal communication, just brief text messages. At hospital. Father still unconscious, very scared. I understood. Of course, she was focused on her family. Of course, she didn't have time for long calls when her father was fighting for his life. I sent messages of support and love, telling her I was thinking of her, praying for her father, hoping for good news. On the 3rd day, she finally called. Her voice sounded tired but relieved. "He's okay," she said. "Father woke up today. Doctor said surgery was successful. He will recover. They want to keep him in hospital for another week to monitor, but he should be okay. Thank you, Roger. You saved him. If you didn't help us, he would be dead now." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. "Thank God," I said. "I'm so glad he's okay. Tell him I'm thinking of him. Tell your family I'm here if they need anything." The subject was dropped after that. Life went back to normal, or at least our version of normal. Daily video calls, constant messages, plans for the future. She told me she'd gotten a job at the marketing company, working as an assistant. The pay wasn't great, only 15,000 baht a month, but it was legitimate work. Respectable work, 9 to 5 in an office with normal people. I was so happy for her, so proud that she'd made this change, that she was building the life she wanted, that we were doing this together, building toward our future. But then it happened again, about 3 weeks after the motorcycle accident. Late night call. Hysterical crying. This time it was her younger brother Natawut. He'd been in a fight at school, she said. Another student had attacked him. He was hurt badly, broken nose, maybe a concussion. They needed to take him to a private hospital because the public hospital wait time was 6 hours, and he was in pain and scared and might have serious injuries that needed immediate attention. 15,000 baht. She sent me pictures this time. A young teenage boy with a swollen face and blood on his shirt. My heart broke looking at them. This poor kid, trying to get an education, trying to make something of himself, getting attacked at school. Of course, I sent the money immediately, without hesitation. Again, the crisis passed. Natawut recovered. Back to school within a week. Everything was fine. Then, a month later, it was her mother. She had diabetes, Juan told me, the kind that requires daily medication. But the medication was expensive. and her mother had been rationing it, taking less than she should to make it last longer. Now she was having complications, dizziness, vision problems. They needed to get her the proper medication, the good stuff from a private pharmacy, not the cheap generics from the government hospital. 10,000 baht, I sent it. A pattern was emerging, but I couldn't see it yet. Or maybe I could see it, but I was choosing not to. Because every crisis made sense in isolation. Motorcycle accidents happen. School violence happens. Medical issues happen. This was Thailand. This was a poor family in Isan. Of course they had problems. Of course they needed help sometimes. And I had the money. What was 10,000 baht to me? 15,000? 20,000? These were amounts that wouldn't even put a dent in my savings. If I could help Juan's family, help the people I was coming to think of as my future family, why wouldn't I? It felt good to be needed, to be the solution, to be the hero who could swoop in and save the day with a quick bank transfer. Then came the house repairs. The roof was leaking, Juan said. Rainy season was coming, and if they didn't fix it now, the whole house could be damaged. Water coming in, molding on the walls, maybe even structural damage. They'd gotten a quote from a local repairman, 25,000 baht. She sent me pictures of the roof, old and worn, clearly in need of repair. Pictures of water stains on the ceiling inside the house. Pictures of her mother looking worried, standing in what was clearly a modest rural home. How could I say no? This was my future family's home. The place where Juan had grown up, where her parents had raised their children, where they'd lived their whole lives. Of course, I was going to help them maintain it. I sent the money that same day, but each transfer was adding up. I'd sent 50,000 every month for 4 months, so 200,000 baht. About $6,000, plus all the emergencies. The hospital, the brother, the mother, the house. I'd sent over 300,000 baht in 4 months. Almost $10,000. That was real money, even for me. Money I'd been saving for years. Money I'd planned to use to build a life with Juan, yes. But I'd imagined it going toward our apartment together, our shared expenses, our future. Not an endless string of crises that seemed to hit her family every other week. I started to feel uneasy. Not suspicious exactly, but stretched thin. Like I was funding her entire family's existence, and they'd come to depend on it. Come to expect it. What would happen if I lost my job? If I couldn't send money for some reason? Would they resent me? Would Juan resent me? Was I building a relationship based on mutual love and respect? Or was I building a relationship based on financial dependence? But whenever these doubts crept in, I'd push them away. I'd remind myself that Juan never directly asked for money. She'd just tell me about problems and I'd offer to help. That was my choice, my decision. She wasn't forcing me. And besides, this was what you did for family. You helped when they needed it, even if helping meant a lot of money over time. What I didn't realize then was that I was being conditioned. Each small crisis made the next one seem more reasonable. Each successful transfer made the next request easier. I was like a frog in slowly boiling water, not realizing the temperature was rising until it was too late. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. Let me tell you what happened when I finally went back to Bangkok. Because that's when everything truly fell apart. That's when I learned the truth that I'd been too blind to see from thousands of miles away. The 6 weeks felt like 6 years. Every day dragged. Every hour felt endless. I threw myself into preparing for the move. Cancelled my apartment lease, sold most of my furniture, packed my important belongings into storage, applied for a proper visa to stay in Thailand long-term, a 1-year education visa that I could renew, giving me legitimate legal status. I'd enrolled in a Thai language school, one of those places that exists primarily to give foreigners a visa. But technically you do have to attend some classes. I didn't care. I just needed a way to stay in the country legally, so Juan and I could be together. I booked my ticket back to Bangkok for the middle of May. I'd be arriving on a Saturday morning. Juan and I had been planning it for weeks. She was going to meet me at the airport. We were going to go straight to look at apartments in Thonglor, a nice middle-class neighborhood, popular with expats and young Thai professionals. We'd find a place together, sign a lease, move in within a week, start our real life together, not as a tourist and a bar girl, but as an actual couple building a real future. I was so excited I could barely sleep the week before my flight. This was it. This was what I'd been working toward. All the money, all the time, all the emotional investment, it was all leading to this moment. The morning of my flight, I was up at 4 a.m. even though I didn't need to leave for the airport until 6. Too excited to sleep. I showered, double-checked my bags, checked my bank account to make sure I had plenty of money for apartment deposits and initial expenses. I'd saved up about $15,000 specifically for getting settled. First month's rent, deposit, furniture, whatever we needed. I was ready. This was happening. I video called Juan from the car on the way to the airport. She answered sleepily, her hair messy, her face puffy from sleep. It was early evening in Bangkok, around 7 p.m. "Sorry, baby," she said. "I fell asleep. But I'm awake now. I'm so excited to see you tomorrow." "Me too," I said. "I can't wait. Just a few more hours." She smiled that smile I loved so much. That soft, genuine smile that made me feel like I was the only person in the world. "I love you, Roger," she said. "I love you too," I replied. "See you soon." I sat in that hotel room for the rest of the evening, staring at my phone, trying to make sense of what was happening. This wasn't the one I'd been talking to for months. This wasn't the woman who sent me good morning messages every day and told me she couldn't wait to see me. Something was wrong. The next day she messaged me saying she still couldn't meet. More family problems. She'd try to come by tomorrow. But tomorrow came and she cancelled again. And again. A week went by, and I'd been in Bangkok for 7 days without seeing her once. I'd flown halfway around the world for her, and she couldn't even spare an hour to meet me. That's when I decided to go looking. I knew where she lived. She'd given me her address months ago. It was a small apartment building in the Ramkhamhaeng area, about a 30-minute taxi ride from my hotel. I showed up unannounced on a Thursday afternoon. My heart was pounding as I climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. I found her apartment number and knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Nothing. I tried calling her and I could hear her phone ringing inside the apartment. She was home. She was ignoring me. I stood outside that door for 20 minutes, knocking and calling until finally a neighbor came out and told me in broken English that the girl who lived there had a boyfriend. A Thai man. They'd been together for over a year. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I asked if she was sure and she nodded. Said she saw them together all the time, that he stayed over most nights. I don't remember walking back down those stairs or getting in the taxi back to my hotel. I just remember sitting in my room staring at the wall, trying to process what I'd just learned. Everything was a lie. Every message, every "I love you", every promise, all of it was a lie. She had a boyfriend the whole time. I was never anything more than a paycheck to her, a foreign sponsor, who was stupid enough to believe her act. I felt sick, not just because of the money I'd lost, thousands of dollars over the months, but because I'd given her something more valuable than that. I'd given her my trust, my hope, my belief that we were building something real together. I tried calling her one more time that night. She finally answered. Her voice was cold, annoyed, like I was bothering her. I asked her about the boyfriend and she didn't even deny it. She said, "Yeah, so what?" She said I knew what she was, that I knew where she came from, that I was stupid if I thought she was going to sit around waiting for some foreign guy who might never come back. She said the money I sent barely covered her rent and that she needed more than what I was giving, that her boyfriend took care of her in ways I never could. Then she laughed, actually laughed, and told me to go home, to find some nice American girl, and stop pretending I could have a life in Thailand. Then she hung up. That was it. No apology, no explanation, just done. I found out later from a friend I'd made in Bangkok that Juan had at least 3 other foreign guys sending her money. 1 in Australia, 1 in Germany, 1 in England. She had it down to a system. Tell each guy he's special. Tell each guy she loves only him. Collect money from all of them while living with her real boyfriend. It's a common scam, apparently. So common that locals have a name for it. But I didn't know that. I was too blinded by what I wanted to believe. I spent the next week in Bangkok trying to figure out what to do. Part of me wanted to go back to her apartment and confront her properly. Demand my money back. Tell her what a terrible person she was. But what would be the point? She didn't care. She never cared. The money was gone. The relationship was never real. There was nothing to salvage. So instead I did something I should have done months ago. I talked to other expats, guys who'd been living in Thailand for years, and that's when I heard the stories, dozens of them. Hundreds of them, guys who'd fallen for the same trick, girls who specialized in this exact scam. The pattern was always the same. Meet a lonely foreign guy, make him feel special, get him to support you financially, keep him on the hook with promises of love and a future together. Meanwhile, maintain a real life with a real boyfriend and several other sponsors on the side. Some girls supported entire families this way. Parents, siblings, cousins, everyone benefiting from the foreign boyfriends who thought they were the only one. One guy I met, a British man named Tom, told me his story. He'd spent 5 years and over $100,000 on a girl from Pattaya before he found out she was married with 2 kids. She'd even brought him to meet her family, her parents, her siblings. They all smiled and welcomed him and thanked him for taking care of their daughter. They knew exactly what was happening. To them, he wasn't a person. He was a resource. Another guy, an Australian named Jake, had paid for his girlfriend's supposed business venture. She told him she wanted to open a small restaurant. He sent her $40,000 over 6 months. The restaurant never existed. She used the money to buy a house for her and her real boyfriend. These weren't isolated incidents. This was a whole industry. An economy built on exploiting lonely foreign men who came to Thailand looking for love and found professional actresses instead. I learned about all the different scams. The sick buffalo scam, where the girl's family buffalo is sick and needs expensive medicine. The education scam, where her younger sibling needs money for school. The emergency hospital scam, where someone in her family is always having some medical crisis. The broken motorcycle scam. The stolen phone scam. The visa scam, where she needs money to get a passport and visa to visit you but never actually applies. The sinsod scam, where she asks for an outrageously high bride price for marriage. Each one designed to pull money from guys who want to be heroes. Guys like me. The worst part is that some of these girls aren't even doing anything technically illegal. They're not stealing. They're not robbing. They're just very good at making men want to give them money. And then when the men realize what happened, they're too embarrassed to report it. Too ashamed to admit they fell for it. So the girls just move on to the next one. No consequences. No accountability. I also learned that the signs were there from the beginning. I just ignored them all. The way she was too affectionate too fast. Calling me her boyfriend after just a few dates. Saying I love you within a week. That's not real love. That's a sales pitch. The constant need for money. Real partners don't have a new financial emergency every other week. The vague explanations. The inability to video call at certain times. The defensiveness when questioned. The way she'd turn things around and make me feel guilty for doubting her. All of it was part of the playbook, and I fell for every single move. I felt like the biggest fool in the world. Here I was, an educated man with a good job and life experience, and I'd been completely played by someone half my age. She'd read me like a book from day one. Saw exactly what I needed. Loneliness, validation, the feeling of being wanted, and she gave me just enough of it to keep me hooked while bleeding me dry. Before I left Bangkok, I went back to Nana Plaza one more time. I don't know why. Maybe I needed closure. Maybe I needed to see it all clearly now that the illusion was broken. I stood outside Diamond Dreams, the club where I'd met Juan, and watched the girls work. I could see it now. The patterns, the techniques, the way they'd target certain guys, the way they'd create instant intimacy with strangers, the way they'd make each man feel like he was special, like he was different from all the others. And I realized that Juan wasn't even particularly good at this. She'd made mistakes, been sloppy. I'd just been too desperate to notice. How many guys were in there right now, I wondered, having the same conversation I'd had months ago, believing the same lies, making the same mistakes. How many of them would end up like me, broke and heartbroken, wishing they'd just stayed home? I flew back to America 3 weeks after I'd arrived. 21 days in Thailand, and I hadn't done any of the things I'd planned. Hadn't seen any sights, hadn't enjoyed the culture. I just sat in hotel rooms and walked around the city like a ghost, trying to process the betrayal. When I got home, I had to face the reality of what I'd done. I'd spent close to $20,000 over 6 months on someone who never cared about me. Money I'd saved for years, Money I'd planned to use for a down payment on a house. Gone. But worse than the money was the damage to my ability to trust. I'd been divorced once already. That had hurt. But this felt different. This felt like I'd been deliberately targeted and dismantled. Like she'd studied me and figured out exactly which buttons to push. It made me question everything. Every interaction I had with people, every new person I met. Were they being genuine or were they working an angle? It was exhausting. It took me months to start feeling normal again. I threw myself into work, started going to the gym, reconnected with old friends I'd been neglecting. Slowly, very slowly, I started to rebuild. But I never forgot the lessons I learned in Thailand. The most important one being this: if something seems too good to be true, it probably is. If someone is telling you everything you want to hear, they're probably telling you what you want to hear. Real love develops slowly. Real relationships are built on more than neediness and money. Real partners don't have constant crises that only your wallet can solve. I also learned that I'd ignored the red flags because I wanted to. Because admitting I was being scammed would have meant admitting I was lonely and desperate enough to be scammed. It would have meant facing the reality that I'd traveled to the other side of the world, looking for something I should have been building at home, connection, purpose, self-worth. You can't find those things in someone else. You can't buy them with money or flights to exotic countries. They have to come from inside you. Looking back now, almost a year later, I don't hate Juan. I probably should, but I don't. She was doing what she needed to do to survive in a system that doesn't offer many options for poor girls from rural villages. She saw an opportunity and took it. What I hate is that I made it so easy. I hate that I ignored every warning sign. I hate that I let loneliness override common sense. I hate that I thought I could be the exception to the rule. But most of all, I hate that there are thousands of guys out there right now making the same mistakes I made, sitting in bars in Bangkok or Pattaya or Phuket, talking to beautiful girls who are telling them exactly what they want to hear, believing they're different, believing their situation is special, believing love can start in a nightclub at 2 in the morning. And they're all wrong, just like I was wrong. If you're reading this and you're thinking about getting involved with someone you met in Thailand's nightlife, please listen to what I'm saying. I'm not telling you this because I'm bitter or racist or because I think all Thai women are scammers. I'm telling you this because I've been there. I've lived it. I've paid the price, and I don't want you to go through what I went through. There are good people in Thailand, honest people, people looking for real relationships, but they're not usually working in nightclubs. They're not usually professing their love to strangers after one conversation. They're not usually having family emergencies that require foreign ATM withdrawals. If you want a real relationship, build it slowly. Get to know someone properly. Meet in normal circumstances. Let time reveal who they really are. Don't let loneliness or lust or the excitement of being in a foreign country cloud your judgment. Don't ignore red flags because you want the fairy tale to be real. And for God's sake, don't start sending money to someone you barely know just because they cry on command. The saddest part of my story isn't the money I lost or even the heartbreak. It's the realization of how common this is. How many men go through exactly what I went through. How many women make a living doing exactly what Juan did. It's an entire ecosystem built on exploitation and desperation. And it thrives because guys like me keep flying to Thailand thinking we're going to be the hero in some romantic story, when really we're just the next mark. I'm sharing this not for sympathy but for awareness, so that maybe one person reads this and thinks twice, so that maybe someone recognizes the pattern before they're in too deep, so that someone else doesn't have to learn these lessons the expensive way I did. Your heart is valuable, your trust is valuable, your money is valuable. Don't give any of it away to someone who hasn't earned it. And definitely don't give it to someone whose job is to make you feel special long enough to empty your wallet. Thailand is a beautiful country. The culture is rich. The food is incredible. The people in general are kind and welcoming. But like anywhere else in the world, there are people who will take advantage of you if you let them. Protect yourself. Trust your instincts. And remember that real love doesn't come with a price tag attached. I learned that the hard way. I hope you don't have to.